holding the line for the conservative movement. This is Stacy on the Right on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
Do you hear that good bumper music? That means you're sliding into the weekend with Stacy on the Right. Sounds brought to you by producer Chris. He's doing the thing, as he always does. Welcome to the show. Find me everywhere at Stacy on the Right and hit the follow button. How else are you going to be able to know what I'm up to? I was posting throwbacks today on Instagram, pictures of me from the campaign in Wisconsin when I was on the Trump bus. It was the Women for Trump bus, and it was so much fun. Oh, so cool. Just the good old days. I came across some pictures and I thought, oh my gosh, that was a really fun opportunity. Now here we are. And I am so excited to be welcoming into the show our first guest of the evening. And make no mistake about it, the next subject we're going to be discussing, we are going to be discussing something very important here. Juliana Sweeny is a U.S. History and Biblical Studies high school teacher in Loudoun County, Virginia. She contributes to Young Voices. Thank you so much, Juliana, for joining me tonight.
Stacy, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so glad you're here because, wow, I was just covering some of the updates from Loudoun County, Virginia. So there was some good news and some bad news. Namely, Loudoun County, Virginia schools still have the gender-neutral bathrooms in place. They have not been able to get it together and rectify that. How are parents taking that in the schools, parents that you're teaching their kids?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, in Loudoun County, it really is a mixed bag. On one hand, we have parents who are speaking up for their children or speaking out against this policy, which would require students to share gender-neutral bathrooms. So some parents are obviously very upset about this, while other parents aren't speaking out and some even supporting the policy.
So I'm interested in, I guess my like common sense engine kicks in for me. If my kids were still of the age where, you know, I'm dropping them off as a freshman in high school and we have two daughters and a son, and they had gender mixed bathrooms, I just wouldn't drop my kids off anymore. We'd have to find an alternative educational situation for them because I don't think it's appropriate for a 13, 14, or 15-year-old girl to be using the bathroom in a restroom with an 18, 19, or 20-year-old boy. Because now there are some school districts where there are 20-year-olds in the schools because they're illegal alien kids and they don't speak English, and so they're putting them in school so they can learn English. That's just a ludicrous proposition to me. Why are parents still dropping their kids off?
You are so right about that. It makes me really sad thinking about, I teach a freshman course and I'll also be teaching a senior course this year, and it makes me really sad thinking about those little freshmen who are, you know, just coming from middle school sharing the same bathroom facilities with grown men. And there are some private facilities, but they're very limited. There are very few. I was looking up today the numbers specifically in some high school buildings. In some cases, there are only 4 or 5 completely private bathrooms that are being shared for the entire high school population. Not to mention the teachers and staff who also have a very limited number of bathrooms that are private for them. And so I can't understand why parents are continuing to stand idly by as girl spaces are being removed.
Yeah, I mean, and the points you're making about the middle school kids, it's just like, this is so nonsensical. I honestly, I find it so hard, Juliana, to understand how the people who are implementing these policies, like how they feel about it, or if have they met children before? Have they ever had to use a men's bathroom at a gas station before? No offense to men. I'm married to a man. We have a son, right? But let's just say that the facilities are way different. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and say it. I'm not holding it back, Juliana. And maybe you found the same thing. Maybe I'm not alone here, but I'm going to go out on a limb. Ever since the gender-free bathroom craze has been kicked in, I've noticed that I used to go into a place like Starbucks, and I'm talking about smaller restaurants, right? So a smaller restaurant where they're not going to have a big bank of restrooms. They're not going to have 6 or 7 stalls in a Starbucks, right? they're only going to have maybe 2 or 3 bathrooms, maybe 2 bathrooms, one male, one female, and inside there might be 2 stalls. But I still had the gender privacy. I could go into a women's bathroom, so I could still use a bathroom that was relatively clean. Now they have they have 2 bathrooms. They're marked male or female, right? It's just a bathroom 1 and bathroom 2. Or they have a male and female marked bathroom, but they're both filthy. So the bathrooms are not clean anymore at the Starbucks. And I noticed that at a lot of different places. Some coffee shops keep their bathrooms pretty clean. They're privately owned. But it's an overall decrease in the standard of what you expect to see when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you're right. And as grown women, I mean, I avoid certain, Starbucks bathrooms because I know it's a shared space and it is gross. You're right. It's also a sanitary issue. And then on top of it, with the pressure of being a high school girl, they might avoid going to the bathroom all day altogether. I was talking to a high school boy recently, somebody who's a family friend who does happen to attend Loudoun County public high schools, and he said he just doesn't go to the bathroom anymore because it's not safe for anybody. Not only is Loudoun County known for problems with sexual assault, but also drug overdoses are rampant in the DC metro area. And so it's not only a sanitary concern, but a safety concern for not just girls, but boys too, who don't want to be, in front of those issues and seeing those things every day.
Yeah. And then, wow, so kids are just like not going to the bathroom. That's great, right? That's great for their internal health. That just sounds fantastic. I mean, it's if it's not one thing, it's another for the poor parents.
Yeah, and I forgot to also mention Loudoun County has acknowledged these problems in their plans for construction. It says in the paperwork during the commenting period that they acknowledge the problems that exist with sexual assault, with drug overdoses, other safety concerns, and yet they're still moving forward, even though those concerns are not only just a thought, but something that is actually happening in the schools, and yet they're still moving forward with these policies.
So am I right that the answer is a sustained kind of walkout on behalf of the parents? Because without the children in the seats, the per pupil expenditure that comes from the state and from the federal government, they take an average of how many kids are in the building every 30 days, and that's how they fund the school. So, that's the only way to get them to listen, it seems.
I do think that's part of the solution. I actually work at a Christian high school in Loudoun County, and so a big part of the solution is parents standing up, taking their kids out of the public schools, and that is a huge commitment. It's a financial commitment, it's a practical commitment, and just, getting your kid to school. Let's say they take the bus to school every day, they're going to have to figure it out and make a commitment to it. I think that's part of the solution, is finding private schools that are not going along with, dare I say, woke policies. I think another part of the solution is the continued involvement of parents in the public school system. I don't think in the United States that any of us are advocating for the riddance of public schools altogether. I think that education is the cornerstone of our free country, and we need an education system that is not so political, but part of that process is ensuring that parents are aware of what's going on in the classroom. And thankfully this week, Governor Youngkin's Virginia Department of Education released new guidance that replaces some old model policies, and he really does continue to follow through on his promise to parents, and he really does champion the rights of parents. And so I think that's part of the solution as well.
Okay, yeah. I can get, I like that. I can get behind that. I'm looking around, I'm thinking, so for some parents, they have other options because the schools have added, an individual bathroom or 2 on every level so that students who are in between, they're not a boy or they're not a girl or they're transitioning or whatever they're doing, they have a bathroom to use. And so there's still the gendered bathrooms. Some are allowing on a case-by-case basis, but Loudoun County is actually known for the rapes that went on there. Like, it's a terrible reputational hit for the school district. And so instead of them kind of saying, okay, we got to clean this up so people will understand that that was a one-off, they're like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, nah, 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 just keep going. I don't get it.
Yeah, you're right. It's really sad how their reputation has fallen so far. I actually grew up in southern Arizona, and my family was a faithful Fox News watching family. And I remember when Fairfax County had a bad reputation for its really left-leaning policies, and Fairfax and Loudoun counties are right next to each other. But now Loudoun County has overshadowed Fairfax County by a lot, and where Loudoun County used to be known for its really excellent quality education, it's now known for its terrible policies and the terrible impact it's having on students and their families.
That's a terrible thing. So that impacts, well,
It
could
it's
impact
sad.
property values, right? I mean, it could. I don't know that it is now because, so let's face it, Loudoun County, Fairfax County, these are hotly, people love living there. There's a real close proximity to the D.C., corridor, everything that you need if you're going to work anywhere in D.C. or in Crystal City. And, it's kind of bucolic out there. It's really nice. I know because I have family who lives in Fairfax County. And so whenever we're there visiting, I always notice how it's peaceful, it's clean. It's a little, tightly packed in comparison to some of the suburbs here in Missouri, but it's also the East Coast. And so, but there's a lot of great restaurants, tons of access to, the shopping you need, the grocery store, the mall, everything. So it's not likely that people are going to dive bomb out of there in droves because of this issue with one school district. But there's also, I feel like there's a really pressing need, Juliana, for people to, as parents, take control of the situation and force the change that they want to see for their kids, because you only have the 18 summers with your kids, the 18 school years, the 18 Christmases, the 18 spring breaks. If you waste, 3 or 4 years with your child in high school holding in they can't go to the bathroom because they have a bathroom issue. I mean, that's your child's whole high school experience. I just can't imagine letting that go on.
Yeah, I agree. And high school is such an important time of kids' lives. They're learning to think on their feet. They're learning to speak up for what's important to them. And they spend 8 hours a day in a classroom. And so parents should want to put their kids in a classroom, in a school that champions their values or at least tolerates them. And that's part of the problem right now across the country, not just in Loudoun County, is that public schools are rejecting the values of parents, of families, of churches, and not just rejecting it, but spitting on it, making a mockery of it. And so the best thing that parents can do is, teach their kids values at home, but also put them in a place where they can thrive, where those values are going to be reinforced instead of rejected.
Well, I agree with you, and I just want there to be an opportunity for these kids to kind of get back to some semblance of normalcy. I hope people don't forget that these teenagers just went through COVID. They, many of them were locked down. They didn't have a normal experience during that time, and now they're in high school. And I can imagine, just thinking about my own self, if I was their age and having been through COVID, if I was in high school and things were nominally back to normal, which they are, I'd be thinking about how much I could enjoy the experience. I think kids today really have an appreciation for school that they might not have had pre-pandemic. They're like actually glad the building's open. They're glad to be in school. So we should make it as good as we can for them. They deserve to have safe spaces to go to the bathroom, to be able to go to the bathroom, and also not to have these social experimentation policies foisted upon them at their schools.
I agree. Yeah, this next graduating class this year, they will have been in 8th grade and 9th grade when they were hit with the COVID policies. And so they were old enough to recognize what was going on, and also old enough at the end of the school year, their sophomore year, when they returned to the classroom, to be so grateful to be back at school, to be with people. And of course, it was a difficult adjustment for students and for teachers and for parents, but they really are grateful to be in the classroom, which is refreshing because that's not always true of high schoolers, but it has been true with that class in particular.
Yeah, I think that's it's nice to see, and they're young. So they have the opportunity to go to tech school or the military or college. They can take a gap year, they can work for a little bit, they can start their own businesses. The same options that have always been available are available to them. But I think there's something unique about this group of students who, they survive COVID and they're going to graduate and go out into the world. They have a totally different outlook. And I feel a little bit like I can't wait to see what they bring with them into these spaces because of that experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a small part of that is why I went into teaching, to see them grow, not just the year that I get them or the 2 years that I get them, but to see where they go afterwards and see how they were impacted, hopefully by their education in a positive way, to also go make a difference, a positive difference in the world after their education in high school ends.
I can't wait. I'm so glad you could join us on a Friday evening to talk about this. Thank you for the work that you do as a teacher in public schools, period, but especially for standing up and being a voice for reason in Loudoun County schools. We really appreciate that and your work with Young Voices. The website for Young Voices is Young Voices. It's actually young-voices.com, young-voices.com. Juliana Sweeny, happy weekend to you.
Thank you as well. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Have a great evening. Okay, so I loved her perspective on that. It's common sense. It's common sense. We'll be back with more Stacy on the Right. Stay right there.